Thank you for all attending. What are we discussing today? So we are discussing some SASBOSS updates that are going through the system at the moment. Some Strive updates. We've got UC Xpress use cases and some information about end of financial year, because we are heading to that time of year. So I'll hand over to Mitch for some SASBOSS updates.
So it's been a while since we did quite a few updates into SASBOSS. We actually released quite a few this month, which have been in more or less our backlog. We've been doing testing, making sure they're up and running. So all of these are already live. They went live at either end of last month or beginning of this month, and you'll be seeing a lot more of them coming soon as well. So the first one that was released is the removal of the IMP domain. So when creating an enterprise inside the system, it's always asked you for an IMP domain. This was actually a legacy thing from when we were still using Communicator and Connect applications onside our platform. And WebEx actually doesn't require this. WebEx is using the actual domain, customer's domain, to do all the instant messaging and putting it back into the WebEx platform. So we've actually removed this field now. Nice thing about this is it's one less field when deploying a new enterprise. Most customers, most partners only had a single option that dropped down anyway. It was just a single click or 2 clicks to fill out. However, it's just going to make things a little bit smoother when filling it out. It's just going to be a field that's missing now. So what you see on the left-hand side there is what you'd probably be fairly familiar with. Now it looks a little bit more like this. So we've literally just removed that one field from that drop-down, makes things a little bit smoother. The next release we did is Device IDs Portal. So we get feedback a lot around new devices in our platform, new supported devices, handsets, models, manufacturers, everything like that. So we haven't, previously that was just going into the standard ideas portal and it kind of just got mixed between everything. We've made this a little bit easier now as well. So inside the system, on the left-hand side, under the devices dropdown, you'll have Device IDs Portal. So this is a new way of you being able to request new handset models as well as manufacturers or anything like that you would wish to provide. And similar to the existing ideas portal, it's your chance to vote upon existing new devices as well. So we do still have some fields required around this. So we're not going to support every single device out there, of course, things like that. So we'll go through that in just a second. But it will mean that new devices, new manufacturers, anything like that you wish to provide, put it in the ideas portal, in the new device ideas portal. And with that as well, it means that if someone's already voted upon it or already added it for you, you add it to that list as well. It means that you get that function, you can upvote it as well. Similar to the existing ideas portal, things that get more votes are more likely to get added to our supported device list. So there's quite a few fields inside the ideas portal as well. So it kind of breaks down into a few sections. Brand and model. So we just need to know what device you wish us to add. Does it support zero-touch provisioning? So that is a big part of all of our supported devices. Is every device we support supports zero-touch provisioning. So we do require to make sure that it does support that. Is there existing telephony technology? So is it a SIPS device? Is it a Microsoft Teams device? Is it a hybrid device? Things like that. It's something that's a Teams only device. We will probably add it fairly quickly, and it mostly just comes into our device ordering portal because it's not touching BroadSoft. It's not touching our existing platform at all. So we can add those fairly quickly. It's those SIP and hybrid devices that we need to do a bit more testing around, and we'll make sure they work with all the functionality you require. Next also is how many numbers are you looking to provision of these services? So if you've got a brand new customer, they have 200 handsets out there, you don't want to order 200 new devices, great for that purpose. If you've got a customer that has one of these weird devices out there that no one's ever heard of before, something like that, and brand new to Australia or being imported or something along those lines, probably less that we're looking at supporting them. However, please put in that number. It will help us work out if it's something that's being requested a lot as well. Would you be looking at ordering these devices through Access 4 as well? So this comes down to, do we need to stock them through our manufacturer, through our distribution model? And if so, how many are you looking at ordering to make sure that we can keep up with demand of these as well? So if you've got a large order coming in, great for us from that purpose as well. And is it replacing the existing model? So is it the T5 series and it's replacing the T4 and T3 series, and we're providing new models to replace old ones? That's really useful for our team to know as well. Just makes it easier for our product team not to have to do that little bit of research as well. So more details around this, the better. There's also a more details field at the bottom. So if you wish to put any more details in there, great. Once again, everything you add here will be reviewed by our product team before it becomes visible across the board. But you'll see new devices being added in here. There's already a couple of devices in there that can be voted upon right now. So I would suggest jumping in there, having a look at what's there and seeing if they are devices that you'll be looking at providing to your customers. Next one is core queue priority. So this is something that's been asked for quite a lot. And this is allowing, if you have multiple core queues within a single customer, being able to say which core queue has the highest priority above the others. So you may have a VIP support queue and a normal support queue. You probably want those VIP customers to be answered first. So being able to say that that's the higher priority queue, make sure that call comes through first before the others. And this is set at an enterprise level. So you have every single core queue within the enterprise in that list. So they are based upon each other from that perspective. And it's just in the actions drop down on the enterprise level. Once again, one of those many add-ons that's being put in there from a call center perspective. So when you do add this, there is two routing policies. First one being ordered. So as you see at the bottom there, it's just in the order you see at the bottom there. So the sales queue will have a higher priority over the support queue, which will have higher priority over the New Zealand queues. So that's how that one will work. The alternative is longest wait time. So all the queues are rated evenly. It's just whoever's been in the queue the longest from that perspective will be the one who gets the call first. And finally, the last add-on that major release we've done is customer login activations. So it will give you the ability to set whether or not if a customer has a login into SASBOSS as an enterprise admin or a group admin, would they be able to create their own users? So it could be really useful. You may not want to be able to provide that access to them. It's up to yourselves. So you can enable or disable this on an enterprise level at this stage. We are looking at doing it on a user level as well. However, at the moment, it's purely on an enterprise level. So it means that you may be able, they may have new starters, they can provision their own new starters within SASBOSS. And that's the first part of this. This is only provisioning and new services. This is not terminating of existing services. So they still won't be able to do that within the platform today. So they're the four major releases that we've provided. There's more in the works, but all four of those are live for you right now to be able to test and provide to your customers.
Thanks, Mitch. For those of you that attended Access the Techs on the Road, you'll notice some of those updates came through the talks that we had on the ideas portal there. So it was really great to see some of those items coming across. Next on to Strive updates.
Yep. So with the release of UC Xpress, we have a couple of new courses coming into Strive as well. So first of all is a UC Xpress product overview. So this is overview of the product, a new person inside your organization or yourselves who are not across UC Xpress yet, being able to have a quick overview of what is UC Xpress, what does it mean from a customer perspective, and what can it provide. The other one we're doing is a how to sell course. So probably less appropriate for a lot of people on this call. However, great for your sales teams to be able to start selling UC Xpress. So that way, when it comes to your teams, you can support it, deploy it, everything like that. But sales is the first part of that process. So those two courses are being released in the next couple of weeks. So ready for the launch for July 1 to get your teams across them. We also have UC Xpress live webinar training as well. So I'll leave this on the screen for a little bit. So there's multiple dates between now and the end of June. So this is a really good way of being able to see a product overview of the platform, lots of the feature set, everything like that. It is run by Courtney, who is our training manager. as well as an SME on the product set will also be in that session as well. So if you do have, and it's more of an overview, can be great for sales, can be great for technical as well. And you have someone else on the call as well, as multiple resources from the Access 4 side who can answer any questions that come up. So this link will also be sent out in post the webinar as well. So anyone who needs it can jump into that and grab the link in the future as well. However, would highly recommend jumping into one of those courses, one of those sessions, and just having that overview of the product set and going through all of that. And then from a provisioning perspective or tech perspective, we have a couple of new courses coming out. So something that's been asked for a lot, both internally and externally, is Microsoft Teams provisioning training. So we're final stages of that within our system. We're running betas for that next week. So we've already got a few, both internal, we've got some teams running through that early next week. And then we've got some customers end of next week who are running through that as well, getting feedback, we're making some changes based on that feedback from them. And then for July 1, we're having those launched. The other one we've got coming up is UC Xpress training as well. So that's launching in June, and that's going to be a 3-hour session that you can come along to. So pre-register inside Strive, come along to that. We go through setting up an enterprise, setting up customers, doing a basic call flow inside the system. And it really is that from the basics, ground up, building a customer with UC Xpress. So if you've done our existing BroadSoft 2-day training, it's kind of a cut down version of that. And then the Teams is kind of a similar version as well. So building out an enterprise, doing a call flow, all of that with Microsoft Teams calling. So we're going to have, by July, having all 3 of those ready. All 3 of them will be a half day each. So that way you can come along and go through those trainings when required. So it means that early July, we're going to have, July. We're going to have, this is kind of what we're looking at from a provisioning workflow. All these new courses are going live July 1 or around July. So 3 new classroom courses, half day each, just to get everyone up to speed with provisioning on our platform across all of our product set. A Strive course around creating customers, maybe something different, but a little bit more simple on that side. And it's more the basics around how to create a customer, put in the porting order, real basics. Half day classroom courses, so turning on services, troubleshooting, those kinds of things. And then a Strive course on Operator Connect. So for when those come up, you'll be able to jump into that course and work out how to provide that to your customers as well. So now into our UC Xpress examples. So a bit of a deep dive into this product set. So we looked at 5 different verticals within our end customer base, or your customers rather. And these are 5 things that, 5 verticals that are pretty common inside our platform. And kind of took a high level of what's usual call flows and being provisioned for those customers to be able to deploy for them. So across the board, schools, medical, car dealerships, hospitality, and retail. So we'll dive into those in a bit of detail. So first one being schools. So we have a surprising number of schools on our platform. And with this, 100 phones is a fairly large school, but a lot of states have requirements for phones in classrooms. So that's something that is a requirement in a lot of places. However, it's not something within our BroadSoft stack, it does try and price us off a little bit. Also doing 10 admin staff, 10 staff rooms, so fairly standard from that perspective, and then 80 classrooms, which is where that really expands out. Doing some call queuing for the admin staff. So calls coming in the morning, making sure that they're not just being missed or anything like that, making it a bit easier from that side. And then because we're doing a simultaneous calling model, 32 simultaneous calls within the school. It's a lot of calls going on. However, if something's going wrong, critical emergency, something like that, it's probably going to hit that number. And then finally, 20 external calls. So calls inbound, outbound, making sure that they can call in and anything like that. The other thing to be aware of with this is, especially in a school, also applies to medical as well, is for those 20 external calls, a call to 000 is on top of that. So you'll always be able to call emergency services from the platform, even if all of those 20 external calls are being utilized. So in this scenario, within BroadWorks, 10 admin users would be 10 executive users. They're going to want things like busy lamp field, BRC, if people on the phone, being able to park calls, those kinds of feature set. 10 enhanced agent licenses, so being able to do that call queuing built into the platform. For the staff rooms, we've done office users. Higher reason behind that is those phones are more likely to be calling outbound, calling external to the school, as well as just having the being able to leave voicemails in those staff rooms could also be quite useful as well. And then the classrooms, we've dropped that down to a common area phone. They're not going to be making a lot of calls. They're probably not calling external. They're probably calling back into the admin staff or something along those lines, or one of the staff rooms. So it's more simple from that perspective. From a group services perspective, we've thrown an IVR in there. So see a lot of schools use an IVR to be able to do when someone calls in saying that their kid's not coming in today because they're sick, something like that. An IVR can handle that pretty well for them. And then a call queue for those admin staff as well. In total, you're looking at about $1,200 or just over $1,200. So fairly large solution. It's going to be pretty costly. Within our UC Xpress platform, breaking it down into a few tiers. So capability, what level of functionality they would like. So from this, we've gone with our essentials tier. Got call queuing, got some IVRs in there, but nothing too complex. And then 32 simultaneous calls, the capacity of 32 simultaneous calls. So for that perspective, you're looking at $480. Channels, so the external calls, 15 external channels. So it's actually changed from that previous slide. I didn't update that first slide apparently, but 15 external calls. So quite a few from that perspective. It's probably not going to hit that number. And however, we have done an included calls model with this. So the included calls, because schools do make quite a number of calls out and they do like having a fairly steady phone bill from that perspective. So $750 for their external calls, more expensive part of that. However, as an overall solution, they pretty much come pretty close on a pricing model. It really comes down to, with that school scenario, as you expand, so if they bring on more admin staff, or if they bring on more staff rooms or anything like that, or they have phones out in the playground for the teachers who are on duty, things like that, that pricing is not going to change. While on the BroadWorks side, as soon as you start wanting additional things on that side, it's going to push up that cost. So from where they are today, it's pretty pricing competitive. However, on the UC Xpress side, they're going to be able to expand a little bit more than what they can on the BroadWorks side.
Over to scenario 2, medical. So if you consider hospitals have a lot of staff, or medical centers have a lot of staff, but there's just a small component of those that are admin users. So you might have 25 phones. You have 10 admin users, which might be the ladies at reception, people taking bookings, billing, that sort of thing. And then you'll have the consulting rooms for the doctors. You'll have a call queuing idea for reception so that when people are calling in, they can queue on, they can receive those calls, they can do some tracking if they need to, all that sort of thing. They'd have 24 simultaneous calls at any particular time, because you do find that at times doctors do need to make phone calls out to be able to talk to their patients, or their patients are calling in. Also with the call queuing, you want to allow for that space and headroom for them to be able to get to those admin users when they're calling in. You've also got 20 external channels to allow for the 10 admin users to potentially be ringing out, chasing bills or confirming bookings or feeding information, but also for those 15 consulting rooms, which are not always going to be calling out. They're potentially going to be seeing patients, talking to patients, but at times they will be calling out to talk to their patients as well. So that allows you enough headroom for all of them to be able to make calls at any one time. So looking at that from a BroadWorks solution, so you've got the admin users. So you want them to be on executive users to make sure they've got busy lamp field, other things that they need to be able to do that. And also premium agents to make sure that on the contact center, they're able to do, skilled-based routing if they need to, because in a lot of medical centers, they tend to have a few companies and they might have different consulting rooms that are controlled by different doctors. And in the consulting rooms, you need an executive user to make sure that they can receive voicemails as well, because a lot of doctors may get a voicemail from one of their patients and need to return that call back to that patient.
The other reason on that as well is using the executive user for the consulting room is parking calls. So we actually get a requirement quite a lot of patients who just want to be able to be parked on their doctor's phone and wait till the doctor's available. So really useful from that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. Group services, of course, call queuing. We need the call queuing in there. And the total solution itself is about $630 per month. Now, if we look at it from a capability perspective, so most of those agents or users within the business will need essentials, which is $15 a channel license. So we want 24 simultaneous calls internally and externally within the business. So those simultaneous calls come up to $360 per month. Then if we look at the channels, we've got 20 external channels to allow for most of the people within the business to be able to make a call at any one particular time, but also to allow for queuing within the business. And they want to have the calls at PAYG because they don't make too many calls. They do receive a lot of calls, but when they do make calls, they're not too long and they're usually local or national, so they're not as expensive or even to mobile to a degree, but they're generally fairly short because they're giving information over to someone or they're asking to come and attend the doctor's surgery or the medical centre. So those external channels come up to about $172 per month, excluding the PAYG component after the fact. So overall, that's a total of 532. And depending on how many calls they make, that could get up to 630. But then again, as Mitch said in the last slide around the schools, if they want to grow those consulting rooms or they want to add more admin people, the cost won't grow as much because they won't need as many people to make phone calls as it will in the BroadWorks solution.
Just one thing as we go as well, if you do have any questions around the solutions, around the capabilities, anything like that, feel free to throw those into the Q&A section of the Zoom call, and we'll be going through those at the end as well. So with a car dealership, fairly large solution. So 30 phones, 4 different departments, and with call queuing for those different departments as well, and an auto attendant to be able to route the calls to those different departments. So a lot of the time, this is a fairly simple, consistent solution for car dealerships. Sometimes it does change a little bit. Of course, more or less phones, pretty standard. 4 departments is pretty standard for that, and they do usually like call queuing. The main change is, do they want an auto attendant or do they want someone to manually transfer those calls between those between those different departments? 48 simultaneous calls. So with the call queuing, calling between the different departments, everything like that, that does jump up sometimes. So quite often 48 is a pretty good number for that, and 30 external calls. So we see quite a big jump in the morning of calls coming into car dealerships around getting car service, booking it in, things like that. And then it will drop down throughout later in the day. So 30 is a pretty good number for that morning busy period before it drops down in the afternoon. So from a BroadWorks perspective, 30 executive users and 30 enhanced agents for the call queues. So everyone inside the organization would be able to be part of a call queue from that perspective and answer calls when they need to. From a group calling perspective, 4 call queues, so for those 4 different departments, and that IVR to be able to route calls. So you're looking about $930. So from a capability and capacities perspective, essentials, once again, it's going to provide us most of the functionality we require. 48 simultaneous calls within the organization, coming to about $720. From our channels, 15 external channels. So it has changed again since my previous slide. I do need to keep these up to date, but it's probably a bit less. It's probably, that is more on the conservative side around the bare minimum they require. They probably may hit a limit on this. Once again, we are building functionality into this around the channels to make sure that they are hitting, if they do hit capacity, it's being notified. And then pay as you go for the calls as well. Coming to 129. So 849 on this. Once again, the big thing that's going to change about this is that external channels number. So Do they need a lot more? Do they need less? That's going to be what changes the price around this. And that can bring it up to be closer to that BroadWorks number. Or 15 may be enough and they never hit that number. So it's really going to be quite flexible around how many external channels they need. But as they grow, more staff, more users, things like that, that simultaneous calling perspective is probably overkill for what they require initially. So that number is not going to change too much. We have just had a question, and I will answer this now. There's just the difference between simultaneous calls and external channels. If you just want to go back to the previous slide. So external channels is how many calls they can make external to the platform. So that is calls from the platform to mobiles, to landlines, things like that. So it's calls outside. It's something that previously we've kind of just managed on the back end with our executive user and our office user. They've got 3 each. So it's not something that's you run into. But with our new UC Xpress platform, it is something you have to take into consideration. Simultaneous calls is something that on the BroadWorks side does not really exist at all. It's just unlimited. However, it's how many calls can be made within the organization. So that's both a call coming in and into a call queue. It also could be me calling John within the organization as well. So both of those are included inside a simultaneous calling mode. So they're the two main key aspects of being able to price up a UC Xpress platform or solution for your customers. If you want a deeper dive in that, I would suggest joining one of those webinars that is being put on by our training team, and they'll run through that in a lot more detail as well.
Thanks, Mitch. Hospitality. So something like a coffee shop or something where you would, don't expect to make many phone calls or even receive many phone calls. There might be orders coming in, things like that. But they might have a few phones around the actual shop itself. So, this particular one that we're talking about here has five phones. There's a simultaneous ring across all those phones within the business, multiple phones in the bar, in the restaurant. 8 simultaneous calls required across the business to allow for people to call in and wait for the ability to get a reservation at the restaurant or something like that. And then there are 5 external channels to allow all those phones to be on the line at any one time. So to go into that in the BroadWorks sense, so we would have the admin users, 5 users, office user, $50, group services, so 2 by hunt groups to allow to hunt across the business, depending on whether it's the restaurant or the bar. 1 IVR to be able to then select whether you want to go to the restaurant or the bar, of course. And the total solution itself is around $65 within the BroadWorks solution. If you look at it from a UC Xpress point of view, capability and capacity side of things, you'd go with the light license, which is a very cut down license, very, very similar to sort of the office user license.
Yep.
And the capacity of 8 simultaneous calls within the system so that you can have some queuing going on and you could be making phone calls within the business as well. That comes out to about $80. Then if you look at the channels, the external channels out to the outside world, allowing people to call in, the calls of Power OG at $8.60 each, that would be at a cost of about $43 per month for the external channels themselves. So overall, that would be $123 per month. So the BroadWorks solution in this particular case is actually more attractive because in most cases within bars and restaurants, you don't tend to expand your phone system too much. Now, if it was a bigger one that they were planning, you might look at UC Xpress for something like that, but one that's already set in place and they've got all their areas set up, you would say that BroadWorks is the best solution in this particular case.
Correct. And it is exactly that. It's showing that UC Xpress can fit a lot of situations, a lot of those bigger organizations, a lot of those more flexible organizations, but something that isn't going to grow much, anything like that. They know how many phones they have. They know how many users they have. BroadWorks is probably going to be a fairly better solution depending on their use case as well from that perspective. In retail, so talking quite a large organization here. So 90 phones, 40 of them being admin working in our head office somewhere. That could be shipping, receiving, billing, returns, anything like that. 50 stores, so quite a few stores. However, all of them only have a single phone. So not making a lot of calls. It's just in case they need to reach out. 48 simultaneous calls. A lot of the calls within an organization like this are probably going to be internal, whether that's someone at head office calling into the store to find out what happened, or the store calling back into head office for stock levels or something along those lines. And then 25 external calls. So we do want people to be able to call the store and making sure they can get a hold of them, as well as being able to call into the head office or any other part of the organization if they need to as well. So from that perspective, when we look into this in a bit more detail, from a BroadSoft perspective, so for the head office, 40 users, we're talking executive users. So we're not putting any advanced functionality in there or anything like that, but just being able to give them the ability to have that functionality of soft phones if they're on the road, busy lamp field from a reception within the organization or anything like that, being able to have that functionality. And then for the stores, office users. Main reason behind this is from a pricing perspective, they may want an included calls model, and with that, the office user would be included with that. It also gives them the voicemail as well, so useful from that perspective. You won't, if you go down to a common area phone, you lose that functionality. So useful. That's the reason why I went with the office user. Group services. So we gave them some hunt groups for head office. So if someone's calling in for needs to speak to someone there, great from that perspective. We may look at upgrading them to call queues in the future. However, that will increase that cost as well. And then an IVR. So that could be used to speak to different departments in the organization, or it could be directing a call to a store instead. So a few different options from that side. And that comes to just over $1,115. So on the UC Xpress side, from a capability standpoint, we're looking professional. So a lot more functionality there. They may want reporting or something along those lines. Multi-tier IVRs is the main reason why we went with this, to give them that extra functionality on that side. But and 32 simultaneous calls around the organization, coming to $640. From a channels perspective, 25 channels, pay as you go on that side, coming to $215. So 855 on a retail side. So really useful from that side. And the nice thing, as they grow, as they open up a new store, as they move stores or anything like that, they can grow a new store without being able to have to put in a new office user or anything like that. So a lot more flexibility as they grow or as they move stores and things like that from that side. You're also getting more functionality on the UC Xpress side, because you are getting call queues included. So those hunt groups on the BroadSoft side, they don't have to be there. You can automatically give them call queues, give them better functionality on that side as well. So from a pricing, from a comparison of feature set on this, the UC Xpress actually comes out on top from that side. Before we jump into question and answers, just a quick reminder about end of financial year. So it is coming up. We're only 6 weeks away, as we worked out yesterday, which surprised both of us. So with that, with porting, get those ports in as soon as possible if we want them in by the end of financial year. So Cat A's probably need to be in by the end of the month. Cat C's now is the answer to that one. And then on net ports, we still got a little bit of time because we managed that a little bit better, because we control that a lot smoother as well, but still get them in as soon as possible. For devices, once again, still getting in there as soon as possible. However, we do have a little bit more time available for those. We do suggest getting them in by the 1st of June, however. All right, let me have a look at questions now. So just while I look this up, someone's asked, John, you'll be able to answer this one. Are SIM calls taking up some of the external calls? If we have 10 SIM calls and 5 channels, that means 5 SIM calls will be taken up by the 5 channels. Is that correct?
Only when they're in use. So for example, if someone calls in and you've got 5 external channels, one of those external channels will be in use, and then a simultaneous call will be in use while the phone is on the call. When the phone releases those calls, all the simultaneous calls, the 10 simultaneous calls would be available to all the users. They can ring between each other. And then the 5 external will still be available. But as soon as the phone call goes out or in across that external channel and is answered on either end, that will use a channel, a channel across the external channel, and then a simultaneous call inside the system.
Yep. The slides that we ran through will be available after this. I'll make sure we'll get Jasmine to share those with you as this comes out as well.
We will also have the recording up on our YouTube channel.
Correct.
As well.
Correct. Paging within the platform will work the same as it does inside BroadSoft. So you still get select your paging group who can actually who can page to it as well. And a page is only a single simultaneous call as well. It is not using all of them. It is a single call. Is there a minimum number of channels or simultaneous calls needed for provisioning? So from an external calling perspective, we do recommend a minimum of 3. So for external channels. However, there is no actual minimum inside the platform. If you do only want a single channel for whatever reason, you can do that. From a internal channel perspective, there is a minimum. I believe it's 4. Yes. So 4 is the minimum number of internal channels available within the platform. Multi-level IVR available on Essentials.
Yes.
Yes.
It's only a single level on
Line.
Yeah.
Mitch mentioned that the simultaneous calls were made available for queuing. Does it mean it's an external call to an IVR that then rings a hunt group onto it? So no, a call inbound to an IVR is one. That IVR will then hand that call off into a hunt group, or inside of UC Xpress, it's actually not a hunt group, it is a ring group. And that is still one call from the external to the ring group. And then the ring group is actually what's paging those devices. So it's one call to the ring group. The ring group to the devices is not a call. It's not actually transferred until it's picked up. So once it is picked up, it is still just one call throughout that whole solution. So it is, if you have 10 users in a ring group, but you only have 4 simultaneous calls, that will still work. That is no problem. As we mentioned earlier, that QR code that was on the screen earlier will be part of the email that gets sent out as well. So you can register for those events. I would highly recommend those. And once the training is live within Strive, our Pendo tool, which is the little question mark inside of SASBOSS now, will inform you once those are ready as well. So you'll be notified once those training sessions go live.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for attending our May version of Access the Text. We appreciate all your time.